What is Elon Musk trying to achieve with his bid for Twitter? Let's analyze the bid. Let's analyze the mechanics of a takeover in general and what one can achieve as an owner of a company. As Tesla shareholders, we're concerned primarily because Tesla, of course, can be used as collateral to finance the bid. However, we believe there's a high likelihood that no actual money will ever move in this particular case, that there's a lot of posturing, a lot of threatening, a lot of bluffing, which is not untypical for situations where certain people want companies to change and companies don't want to change. This is Not Even Wrong podcast. It's April 15th, 2022. This is Krim Delco. Since the last update, we're down 3.5%. The market is down 1.2% for the year. We are down 15.5%. The market's down 7.8%. We're underperforming by 7.8%. Elon Musk did place a bid on Twitter. It's not an official bid. It's not a bid in a sense that there is a clear document which says, I'm going to pay X, and if this doesn't happen, then that happens, etc. It's not that kind of situation. It is a non-binding proposal. That means that it's a letter that says, look, I'm intending to do something, and I don't have any obligation whatsoever to do anything here. So it means very little, to be honest. But nevertheless, it's something. It moved it moved the stock in the market. Not much, actually, on the day. The stock even was down. But of course, that was expected. The market was kind of pricing in something like that. So that's why the stock didn't move on the actual day of the announcement. The stock is now trading at a spread of almost 20% to the bid. In other words, if you buy the stock and the bid actually happens and you end up tendering for $54.20, you can make about 20% return, which is relatively high for a risk-arb situation. But it's also, you have to consider the downside here. If the bid doesn't happen, there could be substantial downside. Now, having said that, the dynamics already have kicked in here. There are other people apparently preparing for a bid. There is a potential for a poison pill being placed by Twitter to prevent something like this actually happening. There are, potential other companies. When I said somebody else is preparing a bid, I'm talking about private equity. There could be a management buyout, and then there's also the potential of a takeover by another company, such as, I don't know, Facebook or something like that, Disney, these kinds of things. Let's just remind ourselves that Twitter has been in a situation like this before. Twitter actually has been a takeover candidate in the, I think it was around 2015 range. And the reason what was happening there was that the company was up for sale, that people were looking at it, in particular Salesforce, and then they walked away because Twitter apparently was too messy. Then Jack Dorsey came back. He fixed some of it, didn't fix a lot, and the company kind of has been lingering ever since. Just to give you a sense, we at Orange Cap Partners bought Twitter for about $50 a share in 2015. And just thinking about the situation from this perspective, we would have made no money even up till today if we had stuck with the stocks. So this is definitely not a very good situation. And the reason Twitter is not a good situation, and now let's analyze a little bit what's going on with the company and what Musk might want to change here. So what's wrong with Twitter is that I think Twitter has been started without purpose. Twitter has been sort of brought to life more by coincidence, a bunch of geeks in Silicon Valley doing their thing and then stumbling upon a gold mine, which is this short messaging system that in a way is very useful, but it's not clear in what way. It's not clear how one should monetize this stuff. So a lot of these things are not clear, and I think this is one of the main fundamental problems with Twitter. It's just not clear what exactly the company should be doing, what the purposes of the company. Now, what happened over the years, unfortunately, is that the company has sort of, I would say, become a kleptocracy for employees and management. And maybe kleptocracy is too strong of a word, but it's become this place where people can work, do what they want, express themselves, pretty much don't do anything really to change the service. They work clearly, but maybe experiment, maybe try a few things here and there. But this is not a purpose-driven company. I mean, this is the exact opposite of something like SpaceX or Tesla, where there's a clear direction, there's a vector going towards decarbonization of energy, towards going to Mars. There is no question what the purpose of these companies is. Twitter is the exact opposite. And what that does to employees, of course, is it also gives them a bit of a free pass to do what they want. And I think that's kind of the way I see it. I mean, I've heard since early 2014, maybe when they went public, that they constantly keep talking about, oh, we have so much work to do, there's so much to do. And then when you really look at the company, nothing is changing there. I mean, almost nothing. It's almost the same thing like 10 years ago. So in a sense, you can say, well, that's fine. I mean, maybe that's how Jack Dorsey wanted it, or the people behind the company who actually have power. Maybe this is kind of like a Bitcoin type situation where let's not change anything, let's leave it pure, and then it will get its value. That's one possibility. The other, like I said, is more that because there is no clear purpose, it's more of a chicken without a head, and a chicken without a head, we all know what that means. So this is kind of the situation now. Enter Elon Musk. Elon Musk comes in and wants free speech. That's the stated purpose. He wants to protect free speech with an investment in Twitter. Now, what does that actually mean? And we've discussed this in a previous episode. We can only conjecture what Musk means with protecting free speech. However, we have a bit of a sense that it probably has to mean that there is some sort of decision-making process within Twitter that is decentralized. So in other words, introduce blockchain technology to decide what is and what isn't on Twitter. This is, in a nutshell, how we see the progress of Twitter, with a bit of Elon Musk, or the whole purpose of this situation has to be along the lines of, listen, we need to implement some sort of blockchain technology to make the service less authoritative and more decentralized. This is the way we think you can protect free speech the best. And free speech in that context doesn't mean it's free for all, it just means it's free of authority. It's not free of somebody, it's not completely free, but it's free of authority. That's what free speech. Free speech really means that no human being, no organization of human beings, no human organization, no company, no government, no nothing can interfere in the process of what's going on the network. This is what free speech means. And in that sense, it's very close to the philosophy of Bitcoin. Bitcoin is not fully free. You can't do anything you want with it. There's certain rules actually attached to Bitcoin. And one of them is to keep the value of money. That's why it's digital gold. However, Bitcoin has the freedom in a sense that there's no throat to choke, no authority is deciding how to run Bitcoin, none of that stuff. So that is, I think, the lay of the land, if you want. This is how it's set up. And I believe that this is what, if I was advising Elon Musk, say, how are you going to invest your resources into this project? Well, this is what I would advise him to do. Again, this is all conjecture, but to have a certain non-authoritative way to decide what is and what isn't on the Twitter platform should be the ultimate goal of this free speech-driven investment that Musk is proposing for Twitter. We don't know exactly what it is. And by the way, if he does that, we at Orange Capital Partners would be even happy to invest in Twitter. Actually, this is an interesting proposition because this would be new. This would be an engineering-driven solution, technology-driven solution. This is interesting intellectual property. So all the boxes tick here in terms of how we at Orange Capital Partners think about investment in general. So Twitter could actually fit into that bucket. We will decide. We have to see what the proposal is. We have to see what the bench looks like. In other words, who are the people actually working on this? And this is one of the things why why Musk is doing a takeover here, is because I think he needs new management. He needs a new culture. He needs a new purpose-driven culture. All these things have to change, because you can't achieve something new with an old guard. You can't teach an old dog new habits. I think that's how the saying goes. This definitely applies to companies. I think to finish this episode, I just want to talk a little bit about the dynamics and the culture and the dynamics of takeovers. So when you have a takeover, typically what happens is that new ownership comes in, but there's an old culture and an old way of doing things. And what mergers do is then the old culture gets absorbed in the new culture of the overtaking company, and typically that's causes lots of people leaving and stuff, and then the culture of a company slowly changes. In this case, we're not talking about a merger, we're talking about a takeover. So it's one person taking over. Now, this one person is Elon Musk, so we shouldn't underestimate the ability of Elon Musk to attract the bench and to actually change the culture. And I think this is another reason, probably, again, this is all conjecture, but this is another reason why we believe that Musk is doing a takeover. He has to own the company, not because he's the richest man in the world and he wants to own things or anything like that. I think it's more that he has the ability to change the board and then to change the culture, change top management, to change the way people work. For example, this whole remote work culture at Twitter is certainly not very helpful for a company that is purpose-driven and has to do very difficult engineering projects. It's certainly not helpful. So those are the kinds of things that I believe Musk is trying to achieve. Again, the best way to do that in general, when you do takeover, is to get the whole control of the company, to control the board, and then reinstall management, reinstall the key people, because that's how you change a culture. You change it from the top. You have to bring in the people that can then hire people under them, and so on and so forth. This is how companies typically work. Of course, there are new ways you can organize a company and things, but we don't want to go down that route. So to summarize, the bid that Elon Musk is proposing for Twitter is most likely going to drive a dynamic of culture war between the people on the Elon Musk side and other people who protect the current culture. The culture that Elon Musk wants is one of purpose-driven culture. We believe that he will strive to implement some sort of Bitcoin solution into Twitter, where the network decides what is and what isn't. In other words, free speech in the context of Twitter, and generally it just means that it's free of authoritative decision making. There's somehow else decentralized network, in this case a Bitcoin type rule-driven decentralized network, decides what is and what isn't. And in order to change that, in order to implement this interesting engineering solution, you need to change the culture, and that's why the bid is necessary. And that's why we believe that Musk is doing this. And if that is what is going on, if we get evidence that this is what he's trying to do, we would be very happy to participate in this project. Thank you.